So let me get to this story. The two systems that I'm talking about are the hard and the soft, and I will talk about the nature of that later on. If you're old enough or you've read the history about a chap called C.P. Snow, who wrote a book called Two Cultures, The Science and the Arts, you will know there's a background there of discussion about the two cultures, the arts and the science. But he wrote technology is a queer thing. And queer's got a different meaning in modern life, but in those days it just meant strange. He brings you with gifts on one hand and stabs you in the back with the other. I guess he was referring to the big successes, the best of times, and the problems with accidents like Chernobyl and so on. But this hard and soft thing comes in many guises, and again, people who are specialists in studying science and art, studying the objective and the subject, studying practice and theory, doing and knowing, logos and mythos, may, at a deeper level, disagree with me. But I think it's the highest level of thinking when I'm saying these are all different facets, different views of this division, this binary division. Life did used to be much simpler. I bought a coffee the other day and it took about 10 minutes to get one because the coffee machines take so long, don't they? And it's so complicated. You can't just buy a coffee anymore like you could. So it used to be so much simpler. And of course, when we're dealing with all these different decisions, we are having to make risk judgments. This is rather topical for Bristol, isn't it? Because of what's going on in the Avon Gorge at the moment. But here you are, risk perception. Oh, look, risk assessment. Oh, we'll have a debate about what to do. Risk management, let's get out of the way. Because when you think about the perspective of someone who's responsible for the safety of this rock face and whether that might happen, it gives you a different perspective. And that's exactly what Bristol Council are doing at the moment with respect to the Avon Gorge. Anyway, let's go back to my school. I was blissfully unaware of all that in those days, but I was studying maths, physics and chemistry. And that was hard. Newton's laws, they talked about throwing a cricket ball and the trajectory, and we could work all that out. But I played cricket. I was discovered one day by the senior PE master who said, oh, I think you've got potential. He said, come to the nets. So he was very confident about his own ability. So he didn't bother with pads or a box. And he stood in the nets and he faced up to me. And I thought, well, I'll show him. And I did the best I could. And there are, if any of you have ever bowled in a cricket match, and you've ever had a ball that's perfect, on the perfect length, and moves in between bat and pad, as the chap plays for us, it goes through there. Well, it hit him straight between the legs. And his face coloured, his eyes watered. And he said, that'll be enough Blockley for today. And he went off to the staff room. And then he picked me for the first 11 the next day. So that was, to me, a demonstration of the difference between working out the physics of throwing a cricket ball and the complexity of bowling the perfect length. And, he would have been out if it had been a proper cricket match. But it was only in the nets. And then another example of something that illustrates to me the difference between theory and practice was cancelling the D story. I'm not going into a long description of this, but we were having our first maths lesson after doing O-level in those days, not GCSE, it was O-level in those days. And we didn't do differential calculus at O-level, but it was our first lesson, and we had a new maths teacher, and he swept into the class with his gown on, looked very important, and he started writing on the blackboard, saying dy by dx equals blah, blah. And he filled the whole blackboard in the classroom with maths, dy by dx all over the place. Well, we didn't know what on earth he was talking about. There was a little lad whose voice hadn't broken In fact, rather tragically, he was killed in a motorcycle accident a few years later. But he was the only one with the courage to put his hand up and say, please, sir, why don't you cancel the d's? dy by dx. We thought it meant d times y over d times x, because that's all we'd done. He said, boy, have you been away? No, sir, this is our first lesson in the lower sixth. Oh, I thought you were upper 6-3. He thought he'd got the wrong classroom. So it illustrated to me that despite all this complicated maths and so on, there is a human element to everything. The third one I won't bother with because I'm going to run out of time. Then I went to university and gradually began to awaken to this issue of the hard and the soft. Because the teacher, the lecturer was telling us to design a building, and we had to design it against wind. And he said, the wind is a force that you put on, it's a static force. I said, well, no, wind is static force, it's dynamic, it moves. But no, this is the code of practice and it's a static force. Not once did anybody say anything about modelling. The word model wasn't used in my undergraduate education. I think that's was an incredible admission, which of course is put right now. We talk about modelling a lot to our students. But methodology in our end of things tends not to be an issue, whereas in the social science, methodology is everything. So we need to think more about our methodology because of these relationships that we have between the hard and the soft. Writing. I wrote a PhD thesis, like many of you have done and might be doing in the future. And writing is a very difficult thing to learn how to do well. And so many of us write so badly, unfortunately. But the thing that struck me most was, I was doing my PhD and I found this research by a Dutch researcher, but it was written in English in an American journal. So I read it and that was good because it was very related to my research. And then I found a paper in Dutch and it looked just as important. So I went to great trouble getting the Dutch translated into English. And what did I discover? It was the same paper as the American one. So I didn't bother doing that in the future. So you realise that many academics do write the same stuff over and over again in different forms. And I guess we're all a bit guilty about that. But then working with others, as a student I began to realise that I relied on my student colleagues. We needed to work together as a team. I was used to that in sport, playing soccer, playing cricket. But I remember when I first started teaching, I used to say to the students, the undergraduates, have you ever thought doing an experiment in a lab group is a bit like playing in a soccer team or a cricket team? No, never occurred to them that it's a similar activity. Teamwork, working together. You all have different roles and you all have to work together. And what came out of all that, by the time I graduated, I thought, I am unique, but everybody else is as well.